Hey everyone, welcome back to Make It Happen Mondays, where we talk about sales, business, entrepreneurship, personal growth, mental health, and everything in between with guests who I truly respect and I think make a positive impact on the world around us. Now today's guest is the second time around, Udi Ledergor. He was the CMO during Gong's rise to industry dominance. I remember talking to him back then that they were on a rocket ship. He's now the Chief Evangelist officer over at Gong, which is a really interesting role in and of itself that we got into. But he's also advised multiple startups, served on boards, and mentored hundreds of marketers. And really, his new book, Courageous Marketing, is all about elevating marketing to a point where we got to stop playing it safe. And that's really what we dove into this with. He's got a lot of frameworks and ideas around how to really push and stand out in a world of sameness, because it is a lot of the same out there right now, especially with AI. Like, you can say, give me the best practices for all this stuff. And so he really encourages companies to allocate 10, 15, 20% of their budget on just ridiculous ideas, so that the budget can be there, so that when it does come up, or if it does come up throughout the year, you can jump on those opportunities. So we dove into that. We dove into a lot of other things about, getting back to his background, but really more where things are headed right now, and the line between sales and marketing, and how marketing needs to be a much more strategic part of the organization. And we need to stop worrying about these vanity metrics and get into the stuff that matters. So if you are a marketer, or if you are a sales professional who wants to learn and understand marketing more effectively and how we can all work together to really elevate, you gotta listen to this episode and you gotta check out his new book. So hopefully you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. Let's make it happen. Udi, what's up, my friend? Welcome back to the Make It Happen Monday podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing great, John. Thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it. We always have a good, fun conversation.
Love it. Yeah, and it was actually serendipitous a little bit when we saw each other at G2, right? Because I hadn't seen you caught up in a while, and then we were at the GTM fund. Yeah, not G2, but and it was interesting, right? I had a really good time there. I don't get out much anymore. I don't know if you do a lot of traveling anymore, but
I'll become hermits at some point in our life.
Yeah, like, I've kind of got, but when I know there's quality people and there's a good environment, I'll show up. I'm done with those like huge conferences at this point. Like I have no need for that.
For sure.
So I think the last time we talked was it mid 2023 or early? Because it was right in the middle of the shit, right?
It was, yeah. I think it was a few months after I transitioned into my role as Chief Evangelist. So that must have been mid 23.
Yeah. And that was quite frankly, looking back on that was probably the hardest 6 months of my entire career.
Nobody misses that time.
No, God, no. But green lights, a lot of things. I'm a Matthew McConaughey fan of that book, Green Lights, where not everything happens for a reason, but silver lining, right? And I think now, and this is going to transition to our conversation as far as agility and what we need to be moving forward here and how we got to keep testing things. And now that I'm just back on my own and it's just me and Megan, I'm so much happier because I can be agile, I can move, I can play around, I can test. So, as hard as it was, looking back, I'm kind of happy. But with you wrote a book since we last talked.
I did. I wrote Courageous Marketing. Here you go.
Love it.
Yeah, it came out on April 10th, became an instant bestseller in all of sales and marketing and a half a dozen other categories. And I'm excited. I go once a week or so into the reports. I see how many people are listening to the audiobook and people buying the paperback and the hardcover and the digital and all of it. So it's really exciting. I had a pretty humble goal for the book, which I'm hitting pretty consistently, which is just to inspire as many marketers as I can on taking the boring out of B2B marketing. That's all I ever wanted for the book. I really don't care how much money the book makes. I'm not selling a product behind it. A lot of business books comes out as a lead magnet, as they're called in the industry, where people are selling workshops and other stuff. I'm not selling anything. I really genuinely want more marketers to stop doing boring marketing and do some cool stuff and inspiring stuff. And based on the multiple messages I'm getting every week from readers and listeners of the book, I think it's hitting the mark and people are going, oh, I was stuck in a rut and this is exactly what I needed to get out of it. So I'm just happy I could be there for them.
Love that. I was going to ask, why'd you write it, right? Because a lot of people write it for legacy. Other people write it for the lead magnet. But it sounds like you just really are trying to inspire other marketers to think big. And is that coming from a little bit of a selfish spot too, of like you're just bored with the typical stuff that you're seeing out there and you want to see more creative things, or are you really just trying to get people to wake up a little bit?
I don't think it's from that selfish point, although I will say that when people write me and say, "Hey, Udi, I read your chapter on Punch Above Your Weight and it inspired me to do a regional Super Bowl commercial," or we did some Times Square billboards with the framework you explained, and my board was amazed, and they're really happy with me right now. That's a great reward in and of itself, just to see the profession elevated and to see people succeed. As anyone who's been in the business long enough will tell you, it's nice to win marketing awards, and it's super nice to be part of a really successful company like Gong. But I think one of the sweetest rewards is really seeing people who professionally grew up on my team, folks like Devin Reed and Chris Orlov and Russell Banzon and Sheena Badani, and seeing them CMOs at companies and entrepreneurs running their own companies now. That is really one of the best moments. And I'm in touch with all of these people. And so I get to follow their journey and meet up with them occasionally. And it's just amazing what different places we all were 10 years ago and where we all are now.
Yeah, I think that, once you get to a certain level in your career, I think that is what really resonates, like the difference that you make in individual people, and you can see it, right? Because you don't know what you're doing when you're putting out a big campaign. Okay, fine, you hit some KPIs and you hit it's like great, okay, but when you see that I mean, I don't know if you had seen, but I did a keynote and where it was called Continuous Growth Mindset, and it was after my dad had passed away, and I was kind of lost. I was in Aruba, and just kind of staring out, and I get this phone call from a rep that I had hired way early in my career. And at first I was like, I don't know, like I'm not in a position right now to have this conversation, but something told me the universe was making this phone call for me. So I pick it up, and he goes, "Hey man, what's going on?" I hadn't talked to this kid forever. And he goes, "Hey man, I was like, I just want to say thank you." And I was like, "For what?" And man, he's like, "What?" He's like, "Well, remember back, at Thrive Networks when you hired me and you fought for me because nobody else wanted me, and you were the one who fought and brought me in, and then we worked together. It's like, and then you left, and I took over VP of Sales." I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, Staples sold us to a private equity. We recapped about 3 times, and I've stayed there the entire time. So all my equity has been flipped, and I'm now a multimillionaire, and my family never has to worry about money ever again."
Oh my gosh.
And Udi, when I tell you in that moment, like there was no, look, I'm not a multimillionaire. So, but there was no, it was all joy. It was all,
I'm sure that made your day and week. Yeah.
Oh, like it shifted. And when I talk about like needing something like that at that time. So I think that's where you start to get the true satisfaction out of both what you and I do, is when you can impact individuals and see what they become, right? Not that we are the ones that caused it but if we were just a little part of it, right?
You don't have to be that humble, John, because I believe that you're of the same mindset. We put a lot of goodness out into the universe, call it karma, call it just being a decent human being. A lot of that is going to stick and make an impact. And even just hearing about it and getting a thank you call or note, it makes it all worth it.
Yeah. So a lot's changed in the past couple of years here. And I mean, AI is accelerating faster than I've ever seen. Last time, I think we talked about how the sales reps, aren't going to get replaced, right? If they use it right way, but lazy ones are. Let's start with where do you see things now compared to then? And are you, because we haven't seen mass layoffs because of AI. We saw a bunch because of 2023 and those type of, but we haven't seen the doomsday, oh my God, everybody's getting fired. So where are we right now from your perspective with AI? Is it still a force multiplier? Is it on its way to replacing a large portion? What are you seeing right now?
Yeah, it's definitely a force multiplier. And just like you said, we haven't seen massive layoffs. I think where things are a little more subtle and perhaps harder to see is I've heard from multiple CMOs and other team leaders that they're growing their teams more slowly than they would have 2 years ago, because they now expect every member of the team to be running half a dozen agents. And before you go ask for an increase in headcount, show me why an agent can do this, or at least part of it. And so now we're becoming superhuman beings. Instead of just having 100% of what we can do, we can probably get to 150 or maybe 180% by adding all these agents. And that means that we will need to hire fewer human beings. And the ones that we do hire, we want to hire them because they can learn how to do this as well. And then before they go hire 3 people, they're probably going to set up a bunch of agents, and they'll take longer, and they'll need fewer people to grow their team. So I think that's really what's going on. And the arms race with all the tooling and the platforms, again, I'm seeing this in sales, I'm seeing it in marketing, we're seeing it in coding, we're seeing it in finance, we're seeing it in legal, is you can kind of break the AI into 2 neat buckets. One of them is an extension of what we've been doing for years and calling automation. But automation was something that had to follow a very specific script, like an algorithm. You do this, and step 1 is this, and step 42 is that, but it's always the same flow. Whereas AI agents don't have to stick to a predetermined script. They actually have logic that can think and say, oh, in this situation, this is going to be the best thing to do. So they're far more advanced than what we used to call automation, but we can still call it automating away things that AI agents can do now. And every day we wake up to news of the AI agents being capable of doing something that they couldn't do yesterday. So that is incredible and mind-blowing, as you just see the new things coming out at a breakneck pace. And then the second bucket is the things that the agents can't do for us yet, but they can save us a lot of time and add efficiencies and productivity by guiding us on what we should be doing next, how we should be doing it. And those are the tasks where we still want to be involved. And so that's where really those 2 buckets of automating away things and guiding us on the rest of them, that's how AI is becoming a fierce force multiplier, because it allows us to do much more than we could do before and stop doing things that AI can do for us.
So I want to get to that, making decisions, because how fast things are moving right now. But I want to ask you this question, because I've been searching for this one, and I could genuinely need some help with it. You mentioned all the different professions, right? Like lawyers, doctors, all this stuff. So, and the fact that now, instead of replacing reps, we're going to empower the ones that we have to be, okay? I am deathly afraid. My daughter's 14 years old. I am deathly afraid for what the next 3 years, right? High school, fine, whatever. But when she gets out of high school, okay? College, I don't know if it's going to be relevant anymore, because IQ, I think, is kind of over. EQ is everything in a lot of ways. But where my fear is you and I growing up, marketing, sales, whatever, we did all this grunt work early in our careers, right? We did the shit work. Like, I don't know, I forget when you graduated. I graduated in 98, right? So phones were there. Email was a thing, but it wasn't like the thing, right? So it was still cold for me. It was cold calling. It was knocking on doors. It was writing shit down. It was doing all this shit, dirty work that quite frankly, I didn't love. But the benefit of all that was that it turned me into the sales professional that I am today, with context, with business acumen, with grit, and all these things. And so if we look across the board, right? And let's forget about sales. Let's pick lawyers. A lawyer goes to school, they pass the bar, and then the first 4 to 5 years of their job is just shit work, like case precedent, looking through crap so that they can give it to the big, girl lawyer, and so they can. But now AI can do all the grunt work better and faster than almost any junior position ever could. Okay. And also the tolerance from a societal standpoint, we tolerated it before AI. We tolerated the learning curve. We tolerated that 22-year-old kid that was going to call us with some piece of shit value proposition and be like, yeah, okay, like kind of sounds interesting. Let me talk to somebody else. We tolerated the fact that as a lawyer, it was going to take them 2 to 3 weeks to get me back a briefing for whatever it was, because we knew that the kids had to go do the homework for it. But now that's an instant. So my question is twofold on this. One is, where do the fundamentals come from at this point? And I think my more curious and bigger picture one is, what are the fundamentals anymore?
It's a great discussion, John, which I had with multiple people over the course of the last few months. And here is my unfiltered opinion on it, which some of it is probably grounded, some of it is pure speculation on my part, but here's how I see it. If I zoom out and I look historically, when I was in the military, this was 30 plus years ago, I learned to navigate by spending hours looking at maps and charting out my navigation course. And then I had to put away the map. And as soon as the stars came out at night, I was thrown into the field and I had to go walk tens of miles according to my memorized map in my head and the chart that I had routed hours earlier. That is a skill that very few, if any, people need these days. So I'm pretty good at navigation, but any 5-year-old can compete with me very successfully now by opening Google Maps, right? And anyone who already has an autonomous car or uses one, I live in San Francisco where like literally in front of me, I can see autonomous cars driving down the street. You have hundreds of them in the city that nobody even needs to look at their Google Maps anymore. Now, you could look at it from the point of view of saying, oh, but what about those basic navigational skills? They're gone. I choose to look at it from the different point of view, which is now that they don't have to invest all that time in what we call the basics back then, they're starting from a much, much higher starting point. They can go much farther because let's assume that life expectancy is not growing at the rate of technology, nowhere near, right? Our parents could expect to live till give or take 80, and so could we, right? I don't know about our kids yet, but right now that's pretty much it. So if we needed to start from the very basics, there's only so much farther, so many rungs we could climb on that ladder. But if someone's now starting at rung number 32, imagine how much higher our children are going to be able to go. I took pride in programming my grandmother's VCR. My children are never going to have that skill. And I'm thrilled for them that they don't need to spend hours going through those manuals and program the VCR. I mean, if they do want to learn how to do something now, they go search for a 5-minute YouTube video and they learn how to do it, or just ask the machine to do it themselves, or ask Google or whatever digital assistant they have. So I think that now back to your sort of work environment related question, I think what we call entry-level jobs and positions is dramatically changing. And the bar for early career is dramatically elevated. I don't think workplaces are going to stop hiring entry-level people. But if in the past, you gave an example from the legal profession, you expected an intern to be able to sift through libraries of old case studies and precedents to find the relevant one. Today, you're going to expect them to know how to use 3 different AI tools to come up with that answer, not in 3 days, but in 3 minutes, and then do something important with that information. So there's still an entry-level position, but it's changing. It's changing. When I used to go to my dad's office 40 years ago, there was a small army of typewriters and secretaries taking notes and printing letters and doing calendar work and what then became writing emails. But now even the most important executive in the world is typing their own emails on their iPhone or Android. They don't need that secretary pool anymore. So entry-level jobs need more education, need more skill set, but they're still entry-level jobs. They can just do what was considered 5 years ago a pretty mid-level career job. So that's how I'm looking at it.
So, and I think you're like which leads to the education system, which even scares me even more, because I don't think the education system is evolving in any way, shape, or form to meet the moment right now. And that's what, oddly enough, that's why I think sales might have the upper hand here. And the reason is because it's never been an educated profession. Well, it has, like back in the early 1900s it was, but now there's probably still about 250, 300 colleges that you can actually get your degree on, so it's going up. So now I think the tolerance for starting at 0 in sales, like coming out of school with your whatever degree and then be like, ew, no, I got a low barrier to entry, let me get in it, and starting with no knowledge of it at all. I think those days are over. But I think if you go to school and you learn the profession of sales, you're now into the working force at a much higher level and much more valuable in a lot of ways.
Yes, and so I'll start with the yes part. Definitely, I know there's sales schools that are teaching how to use tools like Gong so that when their graduates come out to the workforce, they already know using some of the top tools of the trade so they can find a easier way in. And I would say that even if you don't take a sales course or sales degree, which most salespeople still don't, but you come to your job interview and said, and you show them that you know them because you use your AI tools that you generically know to research who you're talking to, what they're looking for, what their achievements are, what their, I don't know, quirks are. You're going to convince them that you can do that for your buyers and prospects. So you probably get hired for that entry level position, even without any sales achievements. That's where I think this is going. You need to show that you're savvy with these tools. There's another word I'm looking for, but that's what you need to show, that you live in the 21st century and you know how to use these tools so that they don't all spring on you as new when you start your training.
So yes, and I agree with you on the 20%. On the top 20%, I think I'm really hoping this isn't true, but I think we're evolving into a Pareto's rule here, 80-20 across the board, where 20% of every profession, every student, every entry, whatever, are gonna be assassins because they know, they're curious, they're interested. AI is a superpower for those people, but the other 80% who are quite frankly lazy, and this is my biggest challenge right now, is we've gone from a search engine to an answer engine. Like Google, you could, and look, once you Google something, we could all argue that Google fed us whatever it felt like feeding us regardless. So we didn't really have choice, but we had this perception of choice where it was like, hey, you know what? Okay, ad. And let me read this one. Let me read, there's my source of truth, right? And now based on that source of truth, let me kind of ideate now and figure out how I'm personally going to use that information to therefore share it with whoever else, right? Now you go, boom, AI gives you the answer. And inherently, that answer can't be 100% true 100% of the time. It's pulling off the internet, for crying out loud, right? Talk about lawyers, like talk about some mistakes I've seen lawyers make, right? So going from that, right? I think for somebody like you and I who are curious, who have business acumen, who understand, like, it's like, I'm like, I don't know where you're like, bullshit. Tell me more about that. Where'd you give me the other view of this, blah, 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 blah. All right, cool. Now I'm going to use that and I'm going to formulate based on this, right? But unfortunately, on the vast majority of our population are lazy as shit. So they're just going to search, boom, cut, paste, go. And with that, there's no learning. There's no business acumen. And I don't understand I don't understand the point of the human in that scenario. And that's where my fear is. My fear is that we're not allowing the laziness is allowed to be just absolutely blown up right now, because it's so easy to get answers that seem really, really real. So outside of, yeah, John, you're like, yes, the 20% are going to be assassins. Like, how do we address that? Because that to me is leading towards mass, unemployment. It's leading to all these different things if that is true.
And I, maybe not justifiably so, but I am optimistic, because if I look back just the last 150 years, which is a speck of dust in human history, a vast majority of people worked in agriculture because they had to sow the seeds and work the land and pick and do all the work of getting us fruit and vegetables and meat and fish for those who eat them. And now it's, I think, far less than 2%, last time I read it, work in agriculture because of all the automation that was introduced. So definitely it was tragic for some people who lost jobs when the farmer finally bought that fancy new tractor or new sorting device or new packaging plant. But if we look at generation over generation, that meant that more people could work in safer jobs, not outside in the sun, not with heavy equipment that could chop their arms off. They became knowledge workers, and they were doing some of this, what we now call robotic work, of searching something and copying that information to another system, and they got paid for that, and that was their job, and everyone was happy for that, with that. But now we're all expected to do more. So it is gonna suck for some people who are, I don't even want to say that it's, although I'm very well aware that that there is correlation in that in different generations and age groups. But I do think at the end of the day, it's on the individual mindset, and someone who is curious and exciting. You know, my boss, Gong CEO Amit, he's in his 60s now. I have never seen someone more curious with the energy of a 5-year-old taking apart a puzzle or a Rubik's Cube. That's the person I get to work with every day. So it is not an age thing. It is a state of mind thing. And I try to to strive to those levels of curiosity and energy. I'm not where Amit is, but probably more than the average 50, 51-year-old that I am. So for some people who don't have that mentality and won't adapt to that mentality, yes, if their job has been mostly searching for something, copying the result, pasting it somewhere else, and calling it a day, they will probably be out of a job soon. Or the rest of us who are evolving beyond that and are in the mindset of the ones who survive throughout history and evolution are not the strongest, not the heaviest, not the biggest, are the most adaptable. It's any evolution book that you read, that's what you'll find there. It's the most adaptable. If you realize that the job we were asked to do 10 years ago is not the job we need to do today, and whatever we're doing now is completely different from what we'll be doing in just 2 years now. If you can adapt and produce value that is valuable today and produce value that is valuable tomorrow, then we're going to have a job. But again, if I zoom out beyond this generation, where there's going to be some collateral damage of people who cannot or will not adapt, the next generation just won't need people in those yesterday's job. They're going to be doing something that's far more high value and interesting, and probably won't be as mind numbing for them as a lot of these drudgery jobs are today.
Yeah. Look, I'm all about evolution. I just look at this evolution as a faster one, right? So I don't disagree. I just think that the Industrial Revolution and all these other things, like, they took so long for that transition to happen, where the old and the new kind of, whereas this one's like, whoop, okay, we're moving fast. So if you don't jump on this train fast, I think the irrelevance factor is going to be faster than in previous generations in a lot of ways. So
I agree. And I have additional perspective on this because I'm on a school board here in San Francisco, and I've got 3 pre-teenagers, 12 and 10. The 12-year-old is in the middle of middle school, and the little ones, my twins, just started middle school. And I can see how the school and the students are struggling with using AI tools. You can't stop them from using them at home anyway. And I think at this point, the smart schools are not trying to stop them from using it at school, but actually teaching them how to look at the output and say, is this credible? Does this make sense? Is it a hallucination? Can I cross-reference this with another source? Does it make sense? And I love that they're doing that. And nobody has this figured out. No school has this figured out yet. But I just love that the students are tackling these questions and problems now. Because again, you and I, when I was a kid and I had a question that was factual, I had to go to my parents' set of Encyclopedia Britannica and look up, K to L volume, and I look for the answer. But that was probably 5 years outdated by the time I got to that.
Easily.
And now they're getting real-time answers from this morning's news. But now the questions are different. Is this credible? Is this been cited? Like, who is this by? Can I cross-reference this? So I love that they are forced to use these cognitive skills, but they're probably coming up with better answers, I think.
Yeah, I actually saw a school, and this is how I think it really should be done, is they spend 2 hours. So with what I do, like training and coaching, I actually think the best application for AI in the short term here is frontline coaching, right? Is like, I just got off a call, tell me what's going on. And because it's right there, whatever. So the school, from a coaching and training, what they do is they actually personalize AIs to the kids' learning style. Because when I train 30 people, right, I try to do my visual, auditory, kinesthetic stuff and get everybody engaged. But inevitably, I am not connecting. There's some people just don't learn the way I present, right? But AI knows exactly how you learn compared to I learn compared to somebody else. And so what happens is they spend 2 hours learning using AI. Like, actually, the AI is the teacher. And they spend the rest of the day on EQ things, like learning how to make things, like, like working together on stuff. And I'm like, that's the answer. Because AI
might be. It might be. I'm raising a brow here because last week there was a big story in the New York Times exactly on that, AI used for education in K to 12. And there is no conclusive evidence yet that those systems that adapt to the student learning styles are actually improving learning so far, as measured by standardized tests and other things. I think the jury's still out. And the one thing I just put in there to make it a little more complicated is that there's a lot of pressure from the vendors of AI to push half-baked technologies, just like they did in the past of, oh, you all need laptops and you all need our search engine and now you all need our AI before there's any conclusive proof that this is actually improving learning. And I'm glad that you ended your answer by saying that actually frees up time for the EQ stuff, because I think at least in the first half of school years, that is all that matters. I don't care how my children's spelling is in second or third grade. I care that they learn how to resolve problems with friends and learn how to share and learn how to not use their body to solve problems with friends.
Yeah, that's why I still love the Montessori, the whole Montessori system, right? Because it's experiential learning. And I've said to my wife, I don't say this to my daughter because I don't want to put this in her head, but I'm like, I don't care that she passes a math test or a science. I care that she learns how to learn. She's curious and she's a good person. Those are the things that I want to make sure. And she has good values, right? So
she achieves that. She's already far ahead of most of the kids,
unfortunately. So, let's talk about this. Going back to coaching, I think we talked last time about your approach to candor and feedback. And I think you called it like your no sugar approach, right?
Yeah, that's the Gong approach. Yeah,
that's the Gong approach. So, feedback these days is interesting, because I think it's the most important thing that we can do. But I think a lot of people don't know how to give feedback and don't know how to accept it either. So how do you what's the fine line of giving direct feedback and having it be accepted? Like what's the nuanced approach to talking to a rep and giving them feedback so that they're open to it, even though it might have to be very direct? And because I've failed at this horribly, by the way, and I have a great example of it recently where sometimes I give very direct, like, look, dude, whatever. Like some kid asked for a refund took a 50% discount on my training, took advantage of a deal that I gave, used it, loved it, said he got a ton of value out of it, and then got fired, and then came back to me and said, hey, can I get my money back? Because I'm fired now and I don't have a job. And I was like, and that one didn't sit too well with me, because usually I'm very sympathetic and empathetic to people. I'm like, yeah, no problem, whatever. But this time I'm like, dude, you took it a 50% discount. You got a shitload of value out of it. And because you got fired, right? So I said, hey, look, I'll give you your money back. Just send me an email, that type of thing. But I do also have some feedback for you. I think you should reevaluate whether sales is the career for you. Because quite frankly, I don't know any successful sales reps who have the mentality that you have right now and would do what you're doing right now. So as somebody who's been in this industry for 30 years, that approach alone tells me I don't think you should be in this profession and should probably find a different role. And he was like, oh, whatever. I forget but then fast forward, I think it was over 2 years later, I get this thread on LinkedIn of I just want to thank you, John Barrows, for all the stuff I've learned from you over the years. And I didn't know it was him, by the way, because I had bad memory. So I was like, oh my God, dude, thank you so much. This is why I do what I do. And then I was like, how do I know this kid? And I looked on the thread on InMail and I was like, and it was straight, punch him in the mouth type, because I probably was a little pissy, right, to him.
Is he still in sales? I'm curious.
Oh, he is. And then he pinged me back. He goes, yeah, man. He goes, look, that feedback that you gave me, it hurt. It absolutely stung at the time, but it made me realize I was not in a growth mindset in any way, shape, or form. He's like, I was in a limiting mindset, and I kind of needed that to kick me in the ass to get. And now I'm killing it at job. I'm doing this and everything else. So he didn't accept it then, right? And maybe I didn't deliver it the right way. But as you've seen Gong grow, as you've seen these new generations come in, we can give the science of feedback all day long. What's your art of feedback?
So in no particular order, here are a few principles that I strongly believe in and have seen them demonstrably useful. And I'll say the two kind of sources that helped forge my thinking on this are, one, you already mentioned, which is Gong's operating principles of no sugar. What we mean by that is that nobody benefits from brooming or brushing complicated issues under the carpet. That just prolongs and bubbles up and simmers the situation. And then when it explodes, it's going to be a lot worse. So face things head on respectfully, but face the problems and challenges head on. Do not try to avoid conflict and try to avoid difficult conversations. or making difficult decisions. Every time we do that, we regret it. And it's much better to pay the price now for having that uncomfortable conversation, making an uncomfortable decision. I mean, some of them are very uncomfortable, like you have to let someone go, or you have to tell someone that what they did was really bad. But if you do it respectfully and constructively, you're always going to end up with a better result by doing it head on. So that's one source of my thinking on this. The other one, I don't know if we mentioned last time we chatted, is Kim Scott's book, Radical Candor, which I'm a big fan of. I'm not the only one I know. They just have millions of readers. And she talks about her time working with Sheryl Sandberg and a lot that she learned from her, and then kind of continued to develop her framework. And a few of the nuggets that I took from her, and I read this book years ago, but I can still like recite a lot of the nuggets in there because they're just very practical, are things like, one, give feedback immediately. Don't wait for that annual performance review, which is almost complete bullshit. Just if something happened today, you should give feedback on that today or tomorrow latest, but do not wait for that quarterly or annual performance feedback. Two, you have to be known for both praising when things are going well, especially for effort. And then constructive feedback will be received much better than if you're the curmudgeon that only comes in to complain all the time. And then at some point people tune out. But if 70, 80, 90% of the time you're calling people out on good things, then they know that you're serious and should be trusted when you call them out on constructive things. And then on that, another great tip that she gives, which I think makes intuitive sense, but it's good to remember, praise publicly and criticize privately. And I can't tell you how many people don't operate that way. And it's just terrible because if you, of course, criticize someone publicly, not only are you acting like a schmuck, but that person is going to get defensive and is going to be worried about saving face in that meeting or whatever forum you're doing that, rather than actually listening and having a real discussion on how they can grow from that. So those are a few of the tips. And here I'll give a positive shout out to one of my former team members, Russell Banzon, who's now CMO at Cresta. I remember more than once that I goofed up in a meeting and said something out of place or should have said something better. And the moment the Zoom meeting was done, my cell phone rings and it's Russell and says, "Udi, you have a minute before our next meeting? I'd like to give you some feedback on the meeting we just came out from. Here's what you said. Here's how that made some people feel. And here's what I think you should do next." And I loved having him as a team player who's actually coaching me on a lot of this EQ stuff and feedback stuff. And so you need people like that on your side. And I know I learned from him at least as much as he learned from me.
Love it. This gets into not only coaching, right, but encouraging now, especially with AI and all this other stuff, coaching reps to the fundamentals, but also encouraging them to take risks. And I think the one you had said, fail fast, right? Last conversation, you talked about failing fast, but in the book, I saw this little concept of failing shallow. Was that it?
I don't think I called it that, but I know where you're going with this. So one of the chapters I had the most fun writing in the book is the one I called Building a Courageous Team, because a lot of people ask me, it's one of the most common questions I get when I do mentoring for hundreds of marketers and different accelerators and VCs and all these forums. And they ask me, but Udi, how do you assemble this team of superhumans that can take risks and be edgy and try stuff? Like we've been struggling with that part. Even if I have that state of mind, how do I make this happen? And so I could answer anecdotally how I thought that worked on my team, but I decided to dive in deeper. And so not only did I read some books about it, but I, most importantly, interviewed over half a dozen members of my team over the years. So I talked to Chris Orlob and Devin Reed and Russell Banzon and Jonathan Kostet and Sheena Badani and Vince Chan and others. And I asked them, hey, can you give me an example of when you felt you were liberated to take risks and run an experiment knowing you could fail? Like, what caused you to do that in the first place? How did you feel when things went right? How did you feel when things went wrong? What did we do as a team to make you feel safe and encourage you to do those things? And out of all those interviews, and then I coupled that with some of the more academic research that I read and could put labels on some of those things, I realized that there were a couple of things going on that drive people to do their absolute best work, which also involves taking risks and doing things that are edgier. And so the first big part is what Adam Grant calls in his book, Think Again, simply psychological safety, which is creating an environment where people can fail safely, where they don't feel that if they get something wrong, their job is at risk. Obviously, I'm not talking about the finance department. If someone is embezzling the money, yes, they probably will.
Or cybersecurity.
Kind of experiment I'm talking about. Right. I'm talking about running a campaign that might have edgy creative, or trying a new target segmentation list, or a different approach to an event experience. Not things that are life or death experiences, right? Fortunately, the stakes in marketing are usually not life or death. So we do get a lot of rope to do these experiments. And so I won't give it all away here because we don't have time for it, but I do break it down in the book based on all these team interviews. What are the 3 or 4 things that we really made sure happened all the time in our team that created that psychological safety? But that is the goal. That is the goal, creating that psychological safety where people, if you ask them, they said, I knew I was expected to come up with crazy ideas, and that playing it safe was the riskiest thing we could do. And that Udi encouraged us to do this, and that Amit, our CEO, encouraged us to do this. And they were always trying to challenge us to think even bigger and crazier. How could we 10x this? Not 10% it, but how can we 10x this? What can we do that's bigger and wilder? And so if you create that excitement and you push everyone, and you do it in a way that makes them feel safe, they will do their best work for you. And then the second part of that is what Adam Grant calls process accountability, which sounds like a yawn, but the concept is important. And here's why it's important to balance out the psychological safety, because if we only talk about psychological safety, then you might rightfully ask, well, Udi, doesn't that just lead to a huge waste of resources because people are scattered all over the place? It's borderline anarchy because they're experimenting and doing things that might not even be helping the business. And I'd say, John, you'd be right to suspect and ask that. And so that's where we counterbalance that with process accountability. And what that simply means, in my words, not Adam's, is that we have clear understanding at all times of what is the North Star that we're all marching towards. What are the KPIs that we have to hit? So here's a practical example. If we're in the world of marketing, maybe we have a pipeline target we need to hit. We need to create $1 million of pipeline this quarter. That is our North Star. Now, go in all different ways, plan your experiments and try your different things, but be ready to explain why you believe if what you're suggesting works, it will help us towards that goal of $1 million in pipeline. So if doing a Times Square billboard can plausibly help us do that, achieve that, by all means do it. But if you're planning an event in Idaho and we don't have any prospects there, so that's not going to help us reach our pipeline target, that's probably not a good experiment to suggest right now. So it's the coupling of those two things, psychological safety, process accountability. That's where the magic happens and you get your team to do their absolute best work.
Do you have to structure that within the org? Because I think on one of the podcasts I was reviewing from you, like Insights Unlocked, you had talked about carving out 5 to 10% of the budget for bold plays. Is this kind of like the Google concept where they want Googlers to, spend 20%, whatever, 10% of their time on weird stuff? And so do you structure it so that they can have those big ideas, or is it unstructured depending on what the scenario is?
So it's a little bit of both. So with the time management, I think today in most tech companies and other knowledge workers, we don't really know what people are doing 100% of their time. You could look at their calendars, but even that, if someone closes 3 hours for deep work, you have no idea what they're actually doing. So I wasn't as worried about carving out the time. There are famous stories about Google is one, but 3M has a famous story of that's how the Post-it notes were created by someone recycling some glue that was a failed experiment into what we now know as Post-it notes. So they did have a policy of like 15% of your time or 20% of your time you can work on whatever you want. I don't know that had process accountability, though. It was definitely psychological safety. But today, especially now that so many of us are remote or hybrid, I'm not worried about policing people's time management. But I do want to go to the part of budgeting that you talked about that I did mention in my book. And here's another very common question that I get from marketers. They say, okay, Udi, we have all these crazy ideas, but how the heck am I going to get someone to sign off on a budget for it? Like, if I've never tried this thing before, I have no idea, honestly, if it's going to work. I probably don't even have the courage to work up and go ask for budgeting for this thing. How did you get buy-in for these Super Bowl commercials and podcast sponsorships and billboards and other crazy stuff you did? And this is where I tell the story of, just like in medicine, most doctors will tell you the best form of medicine is preventive medicine, right? Like, watch your diet and work out before you get diabetes, not after. And so with crazy ideas, otherwise known as marketing experiments, I would propose the same approach. And here's what I've been doing for years at multiple companies, and I advise other marketers to do. When you're creating the budget for next year, I always try to set aside roughly 10% of the program's budget. It can be 5%, it can be 12%. If you can get 10, that's wonderful. Set them aside in a budget line item that is labeled marketing experiments. Internally, when we were working on the budget, what you would see in that spreadsheet would literally say Udi's crazy ideas. And I think Russell, again, stopped me before sending that to the CFO and said, can we just change it to marketing experiments so it looks a little more professional? Like, yes, we should do that, Russell. Thank you.
Good idea.
Good idea. So one of his many. So here's, now, it always got approved. Maybe they lowered a percent or two, but that budget item, I always got approved. And here's how we approved it. So there's two rationales when the CFO or our finance partner or even the CEO would ask, well, why are you like earmarking this budget for marketing experiments? And so here are the two things I explain. One, there are going to be marketing opportunities that show up throughout the year, next year, that I don't know about now when we're signing off on the budget. And we're both going to agree that we should take advantage of those opportunities, but I don't know about them yet. Here's a super simple example. Let's say John is putting a big marketing event next October, and you're planning it 6 months in advance, which means you're going to start announcing it and looking for sponsors in April. But now we're in November trying to close this next year's budget. Mark hasn't even thought up of his next big event, so he hasn't announced it. So I want to make sure I have a budget so that when I get the call in April saying, hey, do you want to be part of our big event next October? I can say, yes, I've actually earmarked some budget for this thing exactly. So those are some marketing opportunities. And I can tell you that a lot of the really amazing stuff that we've done is when one of my media contacts at NBC or CBS calls me and say, hey, Udi, I just had an advertiser back out of a deal of, I don't know, taking over a Super Bowl in-game spot in Seattle. I can give it to you for like a quarter of the price. And I'm like, yes, I've saved money for this. I can do this now. Or we want to try this new digital overlay on the Warriors court. I'll give it to you for $5,000. Now, $5,000 is not a lot of money, but for some marketers, it would still be a 3-week long process of trying to get budget approval. By then, Jesse from NBC has moved on to their next contact because he needs to sell this by end of week. And so preemptively having that budget is really, really helpful. And then the second rationale that I give is the following. When we're doing demand gen, which is arguably the biggest job of any marketing team, any channels that are working for us now are going to tap out at some point. It could be next quarter, it could be next year. I don't know. I do know that whatever we're doing now, we cannot assume that it's going to continue working forever. And if that's the assumption that we can all agree on, then I need to be experimenting with new channels now so that when one of the existing one taps out, I already have the next one ready to go. So we can double down on those channels when we need them before it's too late.
Yeah, and I think that, like we said, it kind of goes back to the agility. And there's one more question before we wrap things up that really kind of caught my attention. And I think it speaks to your values and the way you show up. It's the courage arc in your stories here, and how instead of it having a hero, and you outline this really well in the book, is, you show vulnerability mid-story. And could you give an example of that? Could you give me an example of something either Gong did or you did personally, and how that changed or how that differentiated you compared to all the other noise that's out there?
Yeah, I think I don't do this in the book, but just in our conversation today, I think there's some interesting parallels between what we talked about a few minutes ago on how to give good and constructive feedback and how to manage yourself as a leader or manager in any organization. A lot of us, especially in the early career days, especially first-time managers, we don't want to embarrass ourselves. We want to create the perception that we've got everything under control. And so we often portray everything as sunshine and rainbows. Everything is going great. No challenges, all good. And then when things inevitably go wrong, it's a big surprise to everyone. And I'm like, oh shit, how could this happen? I think over time, and as I grew my professional confidence and maturity and received good feedback from my colleagues, I learned how to portray a more balanced picture of what was really going on in my part of the business. I'll give you an example from our template for board slides at Gong for years. Has been every business function shows a slide with two columns, highlights and lowlights. And the highlights are what we all want to start with, the things we're proud of that went really well. The lowlights or watch items are things that are not going as well as planned. And we want to show them early, to show that we know about them. Here's why we think they're happening, and here's what we're doing to fix them moving forward. Now, even in the best of quarters, we never leave that lowlights column empty because there's always something that needs repair or improvement in the business. And when we show that consistently over time, it actually increases confidence in us because that really shows that we're on top of everything and we know what's going well. And even when everything is going well, we could be crushing targets. There's still a bunch of things that we want to make sure are going to be better next quarter. When we show that, that shows maturity and that shows that we can be trusted because we're not always selling internally. Right? Your salespeople, you always need to be selling. That's great. But to be a good seller, you have to be trusted. And when, especially internally, if we're drinking our own Kool-Aid and if we're just selling sunshine and rainbows the whole time, we're going to lose that trust.
And that's what scares me right now is like the Instagram world where everything looks perfect, right? Like, and we all know the family that, you know, if you saw them on Instagram, you're like, oh my God, like they have all their shit together, but you know, they're a train wreck and, you know, like you actually know them. It's like, good Lord. And this goes back to authenticity and a conversation I was having yesterday I don't understand why authenticity is so hard because it's so much harder to be fake. And because now you got to remember shit, like, you know, so I remember I had done I forget what it was. I had posted something about, oh yeah, like back in 2023 when I got the shit kicked out of me and I was just going through it, right? And I had posted like, yep, this sucked. I lost everything. I went from 6 million to 0 and da-da-da-da. And I get on the phone with a peer of mine and he's like, how you been? And he hadn't read anything, but I was like, yeah, man, it's been brutal. And I kind of talked through it and no joke, Udi, he goes like this. He goes, oh, thank God. And I was like, what? I'm like, dude, I just told you I had the worst 6 months of my entire career here. And you just said, thank God. Please tell me why you just said, thank God. He goes, John, I thought I was the only one. And I was like, what? He goes, I honestly, he's like, I see everybody on LinkedIn crushing it. I see people getting tons of likes and comments and all this other stuff. And he's like, I'm not. And I feel like I honestly feel like I'm the only one. So for somebody like you with your following and how long you've been in this business, for you to be struggling right now, actually, he's like, I'm sorry, but it makes me feel so much better. And that's why I was like, whoa. And I immediately after that conversation just lit up a video on LinkedIn and I said, hey, everybody, it's fucked up out there. Like, it's okay. Like nothing, like you don't have to pretend like it's like I'm struggling. There's million. And I just had this conversation. And so if you're out there thinking that you're the only one, I promise you, you're not. So 100%. Why, let's end on this. Why do you think authenticity is so fucking hard for so many people? It goes to the a lot of things that we've been talking about here, right? Like, why is it so hard? I just don't understand it.
I'm not going to pretend to be a psychologist, but my somewhat educated guess is that just like we sometimes notice how we react when we see someone messing up, and then we don't want to be on the receiving end of that. We don't want others to judge us for things that either we don't have our shit together, we might have just lost the job, we're not doing great as parents or as children or spouses or whatever. And we just want to keep it to ourselves, thinking that that will help keep up appearances and everyone's going to think we're these hotshots. But I think I speak for all of us when I say we all have these friends or acquaintances in our life that we just get tired of, because every time we meet them, everything is just going so great and everything is so awesome. And at some point you try kind of probing, yeah, but what about that? And what about that? Like, tell me, like, couldn't all be great? No, man, it's all great. It's all amazing. It just gets really boring because I know they're not sharing everything. I want to be them for them. I'm not looking to pry to judge them. I'm looking to be there to share some sort of shared experiences. And I'll end with when I forgot that myself, as I was in pretty advanced rounds of editing my book just a few months ago. My editor, Lori Lynn, she went through the advanced draft. She said, Udi, I like all of this, but here's the problem. You seem too damn perfect because the entire book is how you went from one success to another. People are not going to be able to relate to that. I need you to add 2 chapters with failure stories. I need you to go back and dig up some of the worst shit that you've done, things that did not go as planned, and put those in there so people know that you're a human being. And I hated that feedback in the moment, but I do what Lori tells me to do. And I dug up quite a few failure stories, because anyone who's ever done anything will tell you that we have way more failure stories than success stories. But of course, we enjoy talking about the successes a lot more than we talk about the failures. And several of them made them into the book, including my second Super Bowl commercial, which was a complete flop compared to the first one. A terrible campaign that we did around reviews collection and Black Lives Matter. Go read it in the book if you haven't. And I've been getting disproportional feedback on those seemingly short chapters that are kind of mentioned in passing from people who read them and said, wow, I was so glad that you put those in there, because it really showed me that you're a human being. And like all of us, you fail a lot more than you succeed. And seeing that in tandem with the success stories just shows me how resilient you are, and that you got up after being knocked down, because, you know, the old cliche is there for a reason, and it's true. Like, we're all going to get knocked down. It's not about never getting knocked down. It's about how we get up, how quickly we get up. And I hope that's part of the message of courageous marketing and courage in general that I try to send with the book, is we all mess up all the time. It's about just getting up and taking every failure, learning something from it so we don't repeat it too many times, and then doing something brand new tomorrow morning.
Yeah, it's like I tell my daughter that all the time, right? Like, failure isn't failure as long as you learn something from it. If you didn't learn anything from it yet, it was failure. You know what I mean? And you can categorize it that way. But if you quote unquote failed, but you could look back and learn something from it, I don't consider that a failure in any way, shape, or form. Because
the only people who never fail are the people who don't do anything.
Who don't try.
So those are terrible role models.
Oh, those are the worst. Awesome, Udi. Well, this, as always, has been an awesome conversation, my friend. Is outside the book, where can people find it? Is the best place to go Amazon? And just what else are you working on right now? What do you want people to pay attention to?
First of all, pay attention to Gong, where I'm still Chief Evangelist, and Gong is going from strength to strength. If you're running a sales team that is not using revenue AI like Gong, you should absolutely take a look at gong.io. I'm happy to connect with any listeners on LinkedIn. There's only one Udi Ledergor there, so that's pretty easy to find. And of course, if you're a marketing leader, a sales leader, an entrepreneur, CEO, you haven't read Courageous Marketing yet, you're wondering what all the hype is about, it's available wherever books are sold. So Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you get your books. Courageous Marketing by Udi Ledergor.
Love it, my friend. Well, congrats again on the success of the book and all the success moving forward. And I'm looking forward to keeping this relationship going, my friend. So thanks for
having me, John.
Absolutely. And everybody else, hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And like I always say at the end of all these podcasts, go out there and make somebody smile today, because no matter how bad your day is going or how bad you think it went, you make somebody smile and you know you had a good day. And the world needs a lot more of that right now. So thank you all very much, and I will see you on the other side. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. With your support and our incredible guests, we're one of the top sales podcasts out there right now, and I can't thank you enough. Now, to keep the momentum going, it would mean the world to me if you could go and leave a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform and share some of your favorite episodes with your network. Also, I am super excited to be launching my new newsletter. where I'll be sharing everything I know and everything I'm learning along the way while I'm out there selling every day just like you. Go to jbarrows.com/newsletter to sign up today. Let's all level up and make this happen together.